The time is just gone 8:36 a.m. on this day of Jummah. If you have just tuned in, we welcome you with trust and hope. You're going to have a wonderful, a blessed Jummah, inshallah. And it's time now to go across to be joined by the president of the South African Hajj and Umrah Council, Shaheen Essop. Yesterday, we had a brief discussion looking at the Ministry of Hajj, obviously devising policy for Hajj 1444. We spoke to someone with regards to some of the policy changes that they have been talking about, aimed mainly at locals, I may add, but also let's try and understand if these changes will be impacting on foreign Hujjaj. Shaheen, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Jummah Mubarak and welcome.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Jummah Mubarak to you, Inaya, to everyone in studio, and to the viewers of Salam Media out there. Jazakallah khairan for the opportunity.
Yes, Shane, Hajj preparations is obviously never ever ending and, starting off always early in the year in preparing for Hujjaj. Now, yesterday we had a brief chat with a representative from a media organization called Haramain Sharifain, talking about the Hajj ministry looking at making certain changes. Some of the changes we've been talking about was they were going to reserve 25% of the quota for people over the age of 65. They were talking about economic Hajj packages and also looking at Hajj registration for local Hujjaj starting off now in the month of Safar. Now, these are some of the policy changes that the Hajj ministry is considering for local Hujjaj. And also they've had the opportunity to assess the shortfalls or the shortcomings of the Mutawif system and the problems that were created. I don't know, Shane, have you heard of any of these developments?
Well, only what we've read in the media, Inayat, from a point of view that the points that you've made are specifically guided towards local pilgrims. One of the big issues that we found during this Hajj is that, as much as they tried to get 1 million people, for Hajj, there was less than 1 million, I think 900,000, to such an extent that on the day of Arafah, they were still, flying people into the country. Our camp, for example, received 250 people from Niger on the morning of Arafah, and that just exacerbated the space problem that we had, in the camp at Mina. At Arafah on the day. So it points out that there was a lot of misgivings, in terms of the fact that the Hajj quota was cut down quite considerably by about 55%, but it seems as if it wasn't really organized well. Organized well in the sense that the whole process needed to be revisited in that regard. Hence, they speak about, a percentage coming in for over 65s, and that's local people. They're talking about more affordable, Hajj packages for local people, because the locals had to pay up to about 16,500 riyals for their 5 days of Hajj. And that in itself was, quite excessive, whether you're looking at it from a South African Rand point of view, whether you're looking at it from an internal point of view. Now, does this, spill over into the international arena? We hope so, because we hope that we can get back to a situation where anybody can go for Hajj, whether you're over 65 or under 65. We certainly believe that this particular problem or this particular age barrier was brought in as a result of, the first Hajj post-COVID, and as a result of which we anticipate that there are going to be changes. This is all, anticipation. This is all speculation until such time as we meet with the Ministry of Hajj and Umrah to discuss, the matters relating or the procedures relating to Hajj 1444, the upcoming Hajj. And that normally takes place around about Rabiul Awal, and they start working from the largest, quota countries to the smallest quota countries. So we'll wait our turn, inshallah, and we certainly will make sure that, all the necessary blocks are checked in terms of making sure that we can maximize the number of pilgrims coming from South Africa.
Yes, Shane, and also just while we are talking of the Hajj barrier, and I'm sure on the SAHUC list there are many people that actually fall in that over 64 category.
Certainly, and the last Hajj was a very, very disturbing one for us, because we had to go out and tell people, as a result of the announcement made by the Ministry of Hajj, that those that are 65 and older were not permitted to go for Hajj. It's a rather disturbing and soul destroying process that you have to fulfill, and inshallah we make dua that we're able to tell everybody this year that if you're in the queue and date and time priority will take place, inshallah, you will perform Hajj this year, inshallah.
Yes. Now, the whole question surrounding economic Hajj packages. And when I spoke to Mohammed Gibran Khan yesterday regarding the locals, and you mentioned up to 16,500 riyals for the 5 days of Hajj, and he mentioned to me prior to COVID, it was like around 3,000 riyals per person. Now, this has been it's been a huge increase in the cost of Hajj, and what he also mentioned is a lot of these issues have actually been raised, and the Hajj Ministry is actually taking note of the shortcomings that took place during Hajj 1443.
Well, let's take a step back. And the first step back that we need to take is that Hajj has now become a privatized process in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. What we used to know from the Ministry of Hajj, the subdivisions thereafter, you're talking about the Mutawif or the Muassasa, they have now become privatized process. And in that privatized process, they've set the bar in terms of pricing. We've been very, very disappointed in terms of the cost that they charge South African pilgrims and the service that they provided to the South African service. We've made our voices known, and we will continue to make our voices known, even at ministerial level, on the basis of the disappointment that we've seen. If you compare to 2019, when the last Hajj took place, the cost for the 5 days of Hajj was 2,550 riyals for South Africans. This year it was 5,655 riyals. And if you look at the comparative in terms of the increase in the cost, the increase in service was definitely not there. It was very, very, very disappointing. So we hope that in engagement with them, physical engagement across the table, we'll be able to find a better solution. We'd be able to find more common ground in this regard. We seem to find the concern that Hajj is now going to become for the wealthy, and we don't want to see that, because the static cost is the biggest issue in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, and it's a double-edged sword for South Africa because of our rand-dollar exchange rate. This morning, the rand-dollar exchange rate is at 17.30. If you equate that to Saudi riyals, it's about 4.6, 4.7 Saudi riyals. So over and above that, if you just take that perspective into account, you take the excessive cost of airlines into account, Hajj is going to be expensive. Your least, cost in this whole equation is your land arrangements, your accommodation, Makkah, Medina, and Azizia. That forms a very, very small percentage of the equation these days.
Well, it certainly does, and obviously, when one looks at the riyals, and also when one converts it to rand, I mean, to spend 5 days of Hajj, spending 35,000 rand, clearly that's insane, Shane.
Well, 35,000 is more insane. Let's think about the South African pilgrims who, opted for additional services at 18,000 riyals. That's almost 80,000 rand for 5 days. And, the irony of the situation is that majority of them don't even use the camps. They use the camp for the first day, and then they go down to Azizia and, go and pelt from Azizia, or spend as little time as possible. If you're spending that money, rather spend it, fruitfully. The sunnah of Mina, the mabid of Mina needs to be fulfilled.
Well, Shane, I'm sure you and SAHUC and everybody else have taken obviously a lot of note of this, and also, yeah, I think of a concern has been the problems that we know the Hujjaj from the UK and Western Europe, and those that were affected directly by the motorway system. We just hope that this obviously doesn't happen in South Africa, because even in the UK and in Europe, there've been calls for the Hajj operators to be brought back because of the type of service and the quality of service that they render to the Hujjaj.
Well, in Nayat, there was no service, no quality of service that was rendered to the Hujjaj. One just needs to look at the whole process. And let's take half a step back again. The Mutawif system was brought into countries where there is no Ba'atha, no Hajj mission. South African Hajj and Umrah Council is the Hajj mission for South Africa. So Alhamdulillah, from that point of view, and from discussions with our counterparts up in Africa, Nigeria, and various of the other countries, we have pushed back tremendously together as a unit against this whole thing for them to introduce Mutawif into Africa. I don't think it can be introduced into Africa, because if you just, we can't isolate South Africa. Let's look at other parts of Africa where people are living in rural areas. They don't have access to internet. They don't have access to online application. They will be prejudiced in this whole application system. Likewise, India, Pakistan, and Indonesia. So these are your majority countries in terms of, the number of pilgrims. Let's not look at Africa, as a non-entity. Africa as an entity has the largest number of pilgrims, taking India, Pakistan, Indonesia all into account. Singly, if you combine all the African pilgrims, those African pilgrims make up almost 440 to 450,000 pilgrims. The largest other individual, continent or country, shall I say, is Indonesia with 235,000 pilgrims. So there's a tremendous amount of work that still needs to be done by the Ministry of Hajj if they want to continue introducing the system. The bottom line with this Matawif system, where it failed, is that there was no downstream support. When a booking was made, pilgrims were split. If you had a couple that got accredited, the couple would go, a male with another couple in a room, a female with two men in another room. So we had situations like that where people had come to SAHUC and asked us for our assistance. And alhamdulillah, one or two of the couples that we could assist, we would assist them. And they were, sorted out with the hotels in Medina and in Makkah as well. On the 5 days of Hajj, we had people from Australia come to our camp and say, please, can we join your camp? We don't have any leadership. We don't have any religious ulama that can guide us. We've never made Hajj before. We don't know how to do this. So those are the things that need to be done. But it cannot be done from people who are Saudi nationals who don't understand the culture and the madhahib and the process from within the country that they are dealing with. You look at America, you look at the United Kingdom, you look at Western Europe, you look at Australia. There's a diversity of people that are coming to perform Hajj from there. You need to have people that are from within those countries to help and to make sure that those countries are dealt with accordingly in terms of their pilgrim and in terms of pilgrim guidance and other logistics that take place.
Well, Shane, we're going to have to leave it at that. Unfortunately, time has actually run out. I'm sure there's a lot more, but you and I will be having a lot more discussions on these
Sure.
matters as time goes by. But for now, we thank you. We say Jazakallah, have yourself a great Jummah, inshallah, and remember us in your du'as. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Ameen. Jazakallah khairan once again for the opportunity. Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Shaheen Essop, President of the South African Hajj and Umrah Council. Next up is going to be Jummah Nasiha.